Hope that you're all doing well, and welcome to the very first feedback session this week. So, before we begin, just let me check that everything is working okay because this is a live video. So, sometimes live technology works, sometimes it doesn't. So, just let me check on my phone really, really quickly, and then we can get into it and I can show you all the feedback and everything that we're going to do today. All right, so sometimes it doesn't. So just let me check on my. It seems to be working fine. Let me just write the title of the post in here. Feedback session one. Done. Okay. So if you can hear me and see me and everything seems to be working okay at your end, just let me know and then we'll get going. First of all, thank you to everybody who did the work and did the task, watched the lesson, all of those things. It's amazing to see so many of you working and so many of you trying to improve your lives and trying to improve your IELTS scores. And it really makes my job much, much easier because it's just great to help so many people. I think when we do these things, we normally teach like about 15,000 people. Um, when you think about the average IELTS class is about 16, it's pretty amazing that we can do this with the technology and everything that we have these days. So, yeah, so thank you very much, guys, um, for sometimes it doesn't. So just let me joining. Okay, so let's see who we have here. Sonia, RM, Pamela, Leo, Chris, Duptho, Peachamon, William, Pavrit, Pavrit. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing all your names. I'm really sorry. Gurpreet, Shirley, that's an easy one. George, that's a difficult one. So many people from all over the world. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of your names. Okay, guys. So there probably will be a lot of questions. So let's just immediately start and not waste any more time. So let's get show you this. All right, so let me just check one last time that you guys can see this and that everything seems to be working okay. Sorry if you're watching the recording of this and that it seems like we're delaying things or wasting time. It's just because I don't want to start the whole lesson and then you can't see it because that would be a disaster. Yeah, so it seems to be working fine. All right, let's get going. So what are we going to look at in this feedback session? Number one, I'm going to give you feedback on your work, and then number two, we're going to do a Q&A session, question and answer session. If you have any questions, just wait until I finish with the feedback, because obviously I can't answer questions and do feedback at the same time. So we'll do the feedback first, and then I'll look at your questions. I'll try and answer as many as I can, and let's get going. So first of all, as I said, thank you for doing the work, guys, and doing the lessons. It's amazing to see so many people taking action to improve their lives. If you spend as much time looking at stuff on the internet about IELTS as I do, you'll see that 90% of people just complain. 90% of people just moan about the test and complain and talk about how they're unlucky. Those people just fail over and over and over and over again. One common thing that I see every single day is people who take action and people who are positive get the scores that they need. So thank you for doing that. And if you didn't get the work done, maybe you're watching this lesson and you didn't get the lesson done yesterday, don't feel guilty or don't give up and be like, I can't catch up. Just go back and watch it in your own time and take action and get caught up and you'll be fine. Okay, so feedback, another word for feedback is criticism. So during these feedback sessions, what I'm going to be doing is I've randomly, well not randomly actually, the opposite of randomly, I looked at all of your feedback and I've taken lots of your samples and I'm going to show these to you. If I show your work, please don't think that I'm picking on you or I'm being overly negative, because the only way you will improve is to seek criticism and use that criticism to improve. That's the only way that you are going to get better at anything. So this is the main reason why we only work with students that have this attitude. So like today, this morning, I was talking to a student who wants to join our VIP course, and I was talking to him and I said, how are you with criticism? We'll be criticizing your work a lot. And he said, I don't really like that. I don't really deal with criticism well. And I said, that's fine. That there's no problem with that, but we won't be able to help you. You should find a different teacher. The only way that you're going to get better is to seek feedback. And remember, guys, none of the things that we're going to say today are criticizing you as a person. All right. They are designed to improve your writing so we can improve your life. So don't be like emailing me saying, why did you pick on me? If I look at your work today, you should be thankful because it's the best way for you to get better. Okay, so this was the question that I set. Let's just remind ourselves. Nowadays, artificial intelligence is being used to drive cars. Why is this happening? Is it a positive or negative development? So in general, there was lots of great work. I didn't see, that lots of people were doing the correct thing. Nearly everybody was making at least one little small mistake. But learning and then doing something, that's only the second stage. So learning is the first stage. Doing the thing is the second stage. The third stage is the most important, where you get feedback, you review your work, and you learn. That's where the learning comes. So hopefully after this lesson, you are really going to move forward with your double question introductions. Okay. So there were 3 things that you needed to do in order to complete this task. Number 1, you needed to understand the question. And I'm going to show you some examples today where it's clear that some of you didn't take the time to understand the question. Some of you even complained yesterday and you were saying, why are you spending so much time talking about how to understand the question? And then the same people didn't understand the question. So it's quite important. Paraphrase the question. So you had to do that. And then you had to briefly answer both questions. So briefly outline your 2 main reasons. So let's look at paraphrasing first. So this is a checklist that you can use, and this is a checklist that I would use when looking at students' work. So the first question I would ask myself, and this is probably the most important one, is, does the sentence mean the same as the question? Because if you're including things that are not there, or including things that are different from the question, it's clear that you have not understood the question, and that's obviously a big problem. Then we would think about vocabulary. Are there any vocabulary errors? Vocabulary errors common when paraphrasing are meaning issues and collocation issues. And then, is the sentence grammatically correct? Does it make sense? Are there any major grammar errors? Are there lots of little minor errors? Or is it grammatically correct? Those are the 3 basic things that we would think about. So let's look at some for, does it actually mean the same thing? So let's look at the question, and then let's look at some answers where it is clear that either the person has not understood the question, or they're adding in things that are not there. Therefore, they're demonstrating that they don't know how to paraphrase. So let's look at this one. Nowadays, automobile industries are growing rapidly in these competitive market with advanced technologies and artificial intelligence. Okay, so automobile industries are growing rapidly. Where does it mention that anywhere in the question? It doesn't. So you're talking about things that are not in the question, so you're demonstrating that you either haven't understood it or you don't know how to paraphrase. In these competitive markets, where does it say anything about competitive markets? So sometimes people do this because they haven't really thought about the question. But then other people do this because they have been looking at lots of sample answers, or maybe they have got a teacher that doesn't really know what they're doing, giving them sample answers. Or most commonly, it's when people are trying to show off their vocabulary. This person, I don't know, I'd have to speak to them, I'd have to sit down with them and work with them. But putting in like automobile industries, growing rapidly, competitive market, I think they're trying to insert lots of vocabulary that they think is correct, but the thing is, they're it's causing them to make vocabulary errors, grammar errors, and they're including things that are not even there. So that's one example of this. Let's look at another. Due to our rapid life movement, where does it say anything about rapid life movement? And rapid life movement doesn't mean anything in English, so that's an error. The complexity of our life, nothing to do with complexity of life at all. And the high technology that we faced nowadays, again, lots of grammar and vocabulary issues because you're inserting things that are just not there. So let's look at another one of these. Nowadays, artificial intelligence is being used to drive cars. So always look at the question. Always remember the question that you're actually paraphrasing. The automobile industry is rapidly developing. Where does it say anything about that? Where does it say anything about the last 10 years, the last decade? And one of their latest inventions is utilizing artificial intelligence for driving cars. Okay, in order to make it safer and more convenient. Okay, so there's lots of stuff there that just isn't included in the question whatsoever. So we've kind of talked about this a lot. That's just another example. Here's another one. Artificial intelligence is the fruit of human beings' much toiled work. Again, seems like this person is trying to insert so-called high-level vocabulary. If you do this and you don't know how to use high-level vocabulary, you're guaranteed to be making mistakes and including things that are not actually there. To save time and energy, which they have thought for ages. Again, this doesn't make any sense grammatically, or the vocabulary is wrong. So you can see that a focus on inserting lots of phrases and vocabulary that you've memorized maybe often leads to you making grammar mistakes, making vocabulary mistakes, and not even following the question. So what do you think is more important? Do you think it's more important that you demonstrate that you've understood the question and that you can clearly paraphrase the sentence? Or do you think it's better to insert lots of memorized words and phrases and make lots and lots of mistakes? Hopefully you'll be able to know the answer to that question. This was a rare mistake, but some of you made this, and I wanted to include this just to make sure that you understand the point that I was making before. So some of you, so highlighted in red, this person has repeated some words. So I said in the lesson that sometimes it's just impossible to vary a word, to change a word. But if you look, 6 out of the 8 words in the sentence are copied from the question. So that's like 75% of the sentence is just copied. You want to vary your language as much as possible. So the key words there is as much as possible. So this person should have maybe tried to vary this a little bit more. It's fine to repeat a word if you can't change it or you don't know how to change it, but don't copy, whole chunks of the question, because what the examiner has been taught to do there is just delete these if you're copying big chunks of it. So be careful there. So change it as much as you can. It's okay to repeat, a couple of words, but don't, copy 75% of the sentence. All right, so let's look now at some vocabulary issues. So some of you understood the question. Some of you understood what to do and how to paraphrase. But again, many of you have been taught that how you get a high mark is to use lots of so-called band 9 or high-level vocabulary or stuff like this. So let's look at someone who has this mindset. Let's look at somebody who has this attitude. Artificial intelligence has expanded its plethora in utility vehicles nowadays. So I even saw some of you commenting on sentences like this and went, oh, wow, you've used big words. That's amazing. Well done. There's no point in using big words if they don't make any sense. The reason why I highlighted this one is I actually saw a YouTube video of some person who got a high band on the IELTS test and suddenly thinks that they're an IELTS teacher, and she released this video that says use these 5 words in the IELTS test and get a high score. and I think like 500,000 people have viewed it, and 99% of the comments are positive. That's the worst thing that you could ever tell an IELTS student, because what are they going to do? They're going to take one of those words, and one of those words was actually plethora. They're going to take that word, just insert it into the sentence without really thinking about meaning or grammar or anything like that, and completely mess up their sentence. This sentence means nothing. So you're getting a low mark for grammar, a low mark for vocabulary, but you're also getting a low mark for coherence and cohesion. Coherence means that your essay is clear, it's easy to understand. So by following these people on YouTube or teachers who don't know what they're doing, you're actually hindering your preparation. It's very, very dangerous. This one, I saw a lot of people using loose synonyms. So this is a good idea, or a good example of when someone is using a loose synonym or a word that they think means something, but it's not really appropriate. Trendy, we would use trendy when describing fashion or clothes or maybe pop culture or something like that, but we wouldn't use it to describe technology or artificial intelligence or anything like that. So this word is accurate in terms of grammar, but it's not really appropriate to use that word. So a lot of you were making that mistake where you were changing words or using words where you didn't fully understand the meaning and the type of the context for using those words. So be careful there as well. Recently, automobiles are driven by robotics. So lots of you made this error, so you changed artificial intelligence to robotics. Robotics and artificial intelligence, this is a really good example of a loose synonym. So artificial intelligence, robotics, many of you think these are the same thing, but let's think about it. My little 3-year-old boy has a robot, but I guarantee you that we bought for $5. Does it have artificial intelligence? No. A robot and artificial intelligence are not the same thing. Now, some robots have artificial intelligence in them, but not all of them do. Another distinction is robots are more the hardware, whereas artificial intelligence is more the software. Most artificial intelligence is just algorithms. It's just computer code. So robotics and artificial intelligence sound like they would be the same, but they're not the same. You have to think of meaning. You have to think, do these things actually mean the same thing? Same with this one, man-made techniques. All right, so man-made techniques, okay, that sounds kind of, okay, that's kind of the same, okay. This is what a lot of you are thinking. Man-made techniques were used in the 1920s to make cars. Something that's man-made is made by man, meaning that it's not natural. It's not part of the natural world. So many of you were making very elementary mistakes like this, where you were just trying to vary your language as much as possible, and you were trying to insert some so-called high-level words, but not really thinking if these words actually mean what you hope that they mean. You have to use words that help you precisely discuss the topic, to talk about the topic, to get your meaning across. This is hindering the meaning, because it's like, okay, why is this person talking about man-made techniques? What has that got to do with artificial intelligence? Nothing. So be very, very careful when you think using vocabulary to think about meaning. This one, four-wheelers. So this is a very good example of somebody who wants to vary their language at all costs. So what this person has done is they've looked at the word cars and they think, I can't repeat the word cars. I can't repeat the word cars. Okay, let's just think of anything. Four-wheelers. Nobody ever would call a car a four-wheeler. Can you imagine if, imagine your father or your mother came home one day and said, I'm thinking of buying a new four-wheeler. You'd be like, well, what's that, a toy? It just doesn't make any sense. it would have been better if this person had just repeated the word car. Obviously, you should try and change things as much as you can. But, if you have the choice between repeating a word or using something like four-wheelers, which doesn't mean anything in the English language, repeat the word. Vary it as much as you can, though. So now let's look at grammar. So I think this was the most common error, and it's because many of you your grammar isn't up to the standard that it needs to be. What standard do you need your grammar to be at to get a band 7 or above? Most of your sentences need to have no grammar errors in them at all. That's the standard that you need to get to. Not perfection, just most of your sentences, over 50% of your sentences for a band 7 need to have no errors in them at all. If you look at most of your sentences, look at everybody's work, 95% of you had at least one small grammar error in them. So let's look at this. In modern life, self-driving cars are popular to transportation. All right, so it doesn't make any sense at all. The person either needs to work on their grammar or they haven't really thought about their grammar. Next one, motorized cars controlled by artificial intelligence can be seen in modern days. Again, grammatically incorrect, doesn't really make any sense. You're not making it easy for the reader. You're not making it easy for the person reading it to understand what you're saying. The grammar errors are causing difficulty for the reader, which is a big problem. The artificial intelligence-based car driving is getting increased popularity in many countries these days. So there's an article error here. This might be a spelling error, or it might be a grammar error. It's not clear, but I just wanted to share with you, because many of you had little careless mistakes like this. So if every one of your sentences has careless mistakes, you're guaranteed to be getting a 6 or below for grammar. If you're getting a 6 or below for grammar, you're probably going to get a 6 or below for coherence and cohesion, because you're not your whole essay is difficult to understand. So therefore, it's pretty much impossible for you to be getting over a 7, even if many of you look at this and say, "Oh, it's just a little error. It's not really a big deal." It is. Same with this one. So this person has a problem with articles. So this is a good example because both of the articles here are wrong. And this is to show you that many of you haven't identified what your problems are. Most students that I work with have, say, 2 or 3 common or particular areas of grammar that they need help with. So that could be articles, prepositions, punctuation, verb subject agreement, tenses, countable, uncountable nouns, relative clauses, all of these different things. So if this person who wrote this sentence identified that their problem was articles, and then they fixed that problem, then that's a huge thing for them, because articles are in every single sentence. If you make a mistake in every sentence, you're going to get a 6 or below for grammar, you're going to get a 6 or below overall. So, paraphrasing checklist, just to remind ourselves. Does the sentence mean that same as the question? The same. Same as the question. I'm talking about small grammar errors, and I made a small grammar error. Good. Does the sentence mean the same as the question? Any vocabulary errors? And is the sentence grammatically correct? So when you are looking at your work, what you should be doing is you should be asking yourself those questions. So go back, have a look at your paraphrase, and think about those things, and that will help you out. Okay, so some good student examples. This one I picked out, not the best one overall, but I thought was nice and simple and easy to understand. In recent times, it is not uncommon to see automobiles being driven by artificial intelligence. Okay, very, very simple, very easy to understand. It's accurate. All the vocabulary is fine. They obviously looked at artificial intelligence and been like, okay, I don't know how to change this, so they just copied it. That's fine. It's better than trying. Like many of you had some crazy things for artificial intelligence, like things that I'd never ever seen before. So be careful in that way. Outline checklist. Okay, so once you've paraphrased, you need to write your outline, which is basically briefly answering both questions. Did you clearly answer both questions? So if you didn't, then it's wrong. Are your ideas relevant and specific? So if they're irrelevant, they're wrong. If they're vague, they're wrong. And are there any linguistic errors, any vocabulary errors, any grammar errors? So here's some common errors that I saw. Number one, too much detail. So if you look at this one, there's way too much detail. They're going into like the examples that they've used. It's way too wordy. You want to save that for the main body paragraphs. It should be just a very, very brief outline. I'll show you some good examples in a moment. Many of you also had way too many ideas. So for example, this one, reduction of traffic accidents as well as improved traffic systems. So this means that this person is going to have to write about two different ideas in one main body paragraph, which means it's either going to be a very, 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 very long paragraph, or they won't develop their main ideas. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Difficult to understand. It is due to the development is technology, and it is a positive change that focuses customer ease and increasing demand. I have no idea what that means really. So you have to read your sentence and think, is the reader going to understand this? If they don't, fix it. It's due to development in robotic scientists, navigation systems. I believe that this is a positive development and also reduces wasting of time and current traffic problems and so. So again, very, very it kind of gives you a headache when you read something like this. Imagine reading this paragraph and then imagine what the rest of the essay is going to be like. You will have a headache by the time you finish that. Do you think that you're going to get a high mark for grammar and vocabulary and coherence and cohesion if your whole essay is like this? So be careful. It is due to development in navigation systems. I believe that this is a positive development because it reduces congestion. So what I've done is just shown this person how to take something that's quite difficult to understand, and I've changed it a little bit. So instead of robotic scientists navigation systems, that doesn't mean anything. Robotic sciences navigation systems, why not just change it to it is due to development in navigation systems? That's very clear, easy. Instead of wasting of time and current traffic problems in some countries, change that to it reduces congestion. All right, so you can see that simplifying your language, making it clearer, is actually more sophisticated. Which do you think is better? Robotic sciences navigation systems, which means nothing, or navigation systems? Which do you think is better? It reduces wasting of time and current traffic problems in some countries, or it reduces congestion? Less is more, guys. The ability to write in a clear way that is easy to understand is far more difficult than writing in a complex, complicated way. And you'll be rewarded for that. Other things that I saw, another common error was some ideas were way too vague. So for example, this one, it's more effective. Like, how vague is that? What does that actually mean? It should be taken as a positive trend because it is more effective. In what way? How is it more effective? If you just put, that's like saying, I like it because it's nice, or like, I love you because you're nice. And, like, what does that mean? Be more specific. All right, so here are some good student examples that I saw. Not perfect by any way, but, pretty good. This is done in order to reduce costs associated with employees in the transport sector and should certainly be seen as a negative development as it will reduce jobs available for the population. Not perfect, but pretty good. Why is it good? It's very clear, easy to understand. The ideas are relevant and specific. Grammatically and vocabulary, and the grammar and vocabulary is pretty good. This person understands that The purpose of writing is to clearly communicate with the reader, not to show off how many memorized words and phrases that you learned the night before your test. This is another quite good example. Artificial intelligence increasingly plays a role in driving vehicles. This is due to advancement in technology, and it should be seen as a positive development because it reduces the chances of road traffic accidents. So again, the ideas are clear, easy to understand, relevant, specific. The grammar and vocabulary is generally very good. So hope that you see the difference between good samples and not so good samples. Here's one of my VIP students who sent this to me this morning, and she was working on it, and this is what she wrote. Recently, self-driving cars have become increasingly common. This is because AI has reached a point where it can safely control a vehicle, and this should be viewed positively due to the reduction in traffic accidents. The reason why I'm showing you this is many of you might be looking at all this feedback and going like, oh my God, I can never improve. I'll never get to the level that I need to be at. This student, when she joined, and when I started working with her, she was making all of those mistakes. She'd failed the test about 8 times, I think. She had been to like 4 different local teachers in India who were teaching her like memorized fixed phrases and telling her she had to use like lots of high level vocabulary. Her vocabulary and grammar was a complete mess. And we worked with her and we gave her constant feedback and helped her, and slowly but surely she improved. And now she can write an introduction of this quality, which is extremely high. Imagine what the rest of her essay is going to be like. Do you think that the rest of her essay is going to be good or bad based on that introduction? If an examiner saw that, they would know exactly that the person has understood the question, that they know how to paraphrase, they know exactly what they're going to be doing in the rest of their essay. Grammatically, it is all correct and the vocabulary is all accurate, and there's some really nice topic-specific vocabulary in there. Many of you were asking AI, can you use AI instead of artificial intelligence? Be careful when using, like, for example, UK, United Kingdom, United States, US, artificial intelligence, AI, kg for kilograms. They're in common usage. Doesn't mean that you can just take anything and just use the first 2 letters of it though. Like IELTS, for example. It's not called IELTS, it's International English Language Testing System. But it's perfectly fine to use IELTS because it's in common usage. So careful with that. All right. So what time is it? All right, guys, so we have about 30 minutes. So I've got my phone, so I'm going to look at your questions now. And answer as many as I can. I can't guarantee that I can answer every single question. So what I will do is I will try and pick questions that I think would be useful for as many of you as possible. Let me see, where's the video? There we go. Okay, so if you can see this, Facebook only shows me like the last 10 questions. So if you've already asked a question, I just can't see it. So feel free to ask the same question again. However, don't ask it multiple times because that will cause Facebook to block you because they think that you're spamming. So I'm going to go through the questions now and have a look. First one is amazing. Treb, thank you, Chris. I've been watching your video since January and I got 7 writing last March. Congratulations, Treb. Well done. Please don't post yours in the comments here and demand that I look at yours and correct yours. That's not what a Q&A session is. That's not a Q&A session. That's an individual feedback session. There's a difference. Um, uh, Mohammed, how many words in the introduction? Good question, because this is something that a lot of you worry about, and you don't need to worry about it. Obviously, you need to worry about the overall word count, but many of you think more about word count of each paragraph or number of sentences than you do about writing an effective sentence. It's what do you think is more important? Making your paragraph like 90 words long, or making sure those 90 words are good. Focus on actually doing the things that you need to do properly, and the rest will take care of itself. So don't worry too much about that. Is it okay to use computer systems instead of AI? No, because a computer system can be dumb. Artificial intelligence is something very, very different from a normal computer. Um, Again, let's not turn this Q&A session into, is this synonym okay? Is this synonym okay? Is this synonym okay? You look it up on a dictionary. If you look up computer in a dictionary and look up artificial intelligence in a dictionary, you'll see the difference. That's how you learn. I won't be sitting beside you on test day and you're going, Chris, can I use this? Chris, can I use, like, that's not a great way to learn anything. Um, Christian, I didn't see the feedback for mine. Yeah, because there's 15,000 of you, Christian. Do you think that I'm going to give individual feedback to 15,000 people? Um, can you please show us some examples for other types of task 2 essays? No, I can't. The reason for that is I would only be able to spend a very small amount of time on it. So it's kind of like passing your driving test and then saying to the instructor, can you give me just some brief tips on how to fly a plane? Can you give me just some brief tips on how to drive a train? Can you give me just some brief tips on how to ride a motorbike? No, because brief tips, just basic structures and doing things really quickly doesn't work. I don't work with students who are looking for quick tips and hacks and cheats. There are thousands of other teachers who will do that for you, but they don't really care whether you get your score or not. I do. So I'm not going to give you just brief little tips and structures and stuff like that. Doesn't work. Um, Again, many of you are doing two things. You're asking, can I use this word for a synonym? Look it up in the dictionary. Like it's pretty easy to do that. Um, and many of you are also posting your introductions and saying, is this correct? I'm not giving individual feedback. This is a Q&A session where I answer your questions. Um, Basanta, how to be your VIP? We have a waiting list that's currently closed, and I prefer to focus on answering questions about how to help people for free right now. I'll be answering more questions about that after we finish. Um, so I'm just skipping all the ones that are just saying, can I use this word? Can I use that word? Just trying to find a question that I can actually answer. Uh, Good question. Is it okay to leave why it is positive to the body paragraph rather than the introduction? Yes, you can do that. It's very important to remember that um, writing an essay is not like a maths question or a physics problem where there's like one way to do it and there's one answer. Writing is not like that. There are many, 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 many different ways that you can use to write an introduction. Many, many, many different ways to write a main body paragraph or a conclusion. Many, many different ways, different ideas that you could use, different structures. Writing is more fluid than, let's say, mathematics or physics. Um, but I cannot teach you 17 different ways to write an introduction. A, it would take too much time. B, it would be really, really confusing for you. And C, you would not really understand what to do on test day because you would have so many different things going through your mind. What I do when I teach my students is I ask myself, what's the most effective way that I know and is easy for them to learn and is effective and will be easy for them to do on test day. And I pick that one way of doing it and I teach my students that. That that means that I've thought about all of the different things that they're doing, but I'm not saying that it's the only way. But I'm not going to waste my time going, with people who are like, can I do it this way and this way and this way and this way? Because it's just the worst thing you can do is follow like 4 or 5 different IELTS teachers because they're going to have 4 or 5 different ways of doing things. And as I've said in the last lesson, your writing is a reflection of your thinking. So if you don't want to follow me, don't follow me. That's totally fine. I have enough students. But what I would say is follow one teacher and one method and follow the teacher that has successful students. Um, I don't say that I'm the best IELTS teacher in the world, but I do have more successful students than any other IELTS teacher in the world. So you can make your own mind up who to follow. Um, Let me find another question. Leo Mike, how can we use punctuation? That's a very, very, very the long answer to that question. I could do a whole course on punctuation. I can't answer that in a short Q&A section. I'm sorry. Um, it's because you can't give people like 2 or 3 tips on punctuation. It's a very dense, deep um, topic. Ahmed, how about a thesis statement? You just wrote a thesis statement. You just answered both questions. That's a thesis statement. Many of you don't really understand what a thesis statement is. Many of you think a thesis statement is your opinion. But if you're saying, I think this is positive, is that your opinion? Of course it is. If you're saying, what was the first question? First question was, why is this happening? I think this is happening because that's your opinion. That's your thesis statement. Again, this is why you need to fully understand what you're doing and fully understand how this applies to all on a deep level all the different types of question. Isn't this Leonardo? Isn't this a too short introduction? Where Leonardo? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. No, it's not. Where does it say anything in the official marking criteria that introductions need to be this number of words? It's what's contained in the introduction. You could write a really short introduction and it could be amazing, the best introduction in the world. You could write another introduction that's really short and it could be the worst introduction in the world. You could write a really long one and it could be really great. Or you could write a really long one and it could be terrible. Length is not the crucial factor here. The actual words, the actual things you say in the introduction is the most important thing, not the length, really. The only time you need to worry about length is your overall word count. Your overall word count needs to be over 250. How does starting the introduction with a general statement affect the band score? Is it likely to improve it? No. And A, you will demonstrate that you haven't really understood the question. B, you'll probably demonstrate also that you don't know how to paraphrase. But most importantly, C, you've just wasted your time because you've wasted time writing a sentence that contributes absolutely nothing to your essay, feel free to do it, but it's a complete waste of time. It's like, before you run a race, you go and run, 10% of the race, before before the gun goes off. It's stupid. I wouldn't do it. I'm not calling you stupid, by the way. I'm just saying it's a silly thing to do. Um, Again, I'm just trying to find a question that would be helpful for all of you. Good question, Charlie. In your view, how can we find good quality synonyms, to paraphrase, or how can we improve our vocabulary? Very good question. Let me show you very easily. Um, Let me share my screen with you. Okay. Okay. So here we have the BBC News today. It doesn't have to be the BBC News. It can be any English, website that has news in it, and it's in English. But let's have a look here. Technology. Okay. First, I didn't plan this. This was the very first story. Elon Musk, who owns Tesla, which is the leading car company in the world for artificial intelligence. You could take that one. So if you read this article, you will be able to pick out lots and lots and lots of vocabulary that talks about artificial intelligence and driving. AI, so if you just put AI cars into Google, I'm going to news. Look at all the news sites. Just pick one of those. Telegraph, AI expert warns of full of great vocabulary. So if you did that for all the common topics, let's say you did that for 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, where you read the news, you picked out some articles about common IELTS writing task 2 topics like technology, health, the environment, education, 10 or 20 minutes a day, and you noted down in a notebook any new words, and more importantly, how to use those words in a sentence, your vocabulary is going to be amazing. If you just get a list of band 9 words and just memorize a list of words without really knowing how to use them, that's the easiest way to fail your test. So that's how to do that. Let me see. Alpish, how much band will you give to the introduction of your VIP student? You can't give band scores to introductions. You can't give band scores to sentences, because the band score is determined by the totality of your essay. That's why if you see a school that says use these band 9 sentences, or this is a band 9 introduction, they're talking nonsense. They don't know what they're doing. Um, I couldn't give that introduction a band score, but I've seen the rest of her essay, and it's very, very, very good. Um, so yeah, it's way up there. It's at least a band 8, if not higher. But her whole essay is like that. Um, but yeah, it's very, very good. Is it okay to repeat AI? What else are you going to use instead? If you can think of something else to use that's accurate, use that, um, or use artificial intelligence. But you know, what are your choices? Think logically about what your choices are. Rana, should we use less common vocabulary in order to get a band 7 and a range of grammatical structures? Yes, but you don't really understand what less common vocabulary is, and you also probably don't understand what a range of grammatical structures is. The problem is not that fact. The problem is you not understanding what less common vocabulary is or understanding what a range of vocabulary is. Um, Less common is not very high. The bar for vocabulary for band 7 is not very high. You get there by using vocabulary accurately rather than focusing on range. Range is important, but there's no point in using a range of vocabulary if most of them are wrong. Um, MSc Sci. Is it okay to write this essay we'll discuss? Yeah, it's fine, but the, the the important thing is not whether you write this essay we'll discuss or not. It's the other words in the paragraph that are important. It doesn't matter how that's a fixed phrase. So this essay we'll discuss. That's a fixed phrase that you've memorized. The examiner knows you've memorized it. It's not about using that. That's not important. What is important is what you put before and after it. Um, Again, same question right after it. Is it a good idea to use words like according to my opinion? It doesn't really matter if you use that or not, because again, the examiner knows what you're doing. It's a fixed, memorized phrase. Doesn't matter. Um, they're useful. Some of them can be useful, but it's really the important bit is what you write after that. Hama, what books do you recommend for being a successful IELTS trainer? All of them. You should not be an IELTS trainer unless you have read every single IELTS book. And what you should be doing if you want to become a successful IELTS teacher is looking at every single book and pointing out all the things that are wrong in them, things that you don't agree with. And then you will be able to develop your own philosophy and your own teaching um, doing that. It really annoys me when IELTS trainers ask me like, how can I improve as an IELTS trainer? You shouldn't be an IELTS trainer unless you know everything. People's lives are on, people's futures are dependent on the quality of your teaching. You shouldn't be an IELTS trainer or an IELTS teacher unless you've done all the work already. Stop using people as your guinea pigs. So. Uh, Sorry for being very passionate about that, but I see it every single day. I see loads of students emailing me saying I've just wasted $3,000 repeating the test 8 times, and I paid $1,000 to some guy who says that he's an IELTS trainer and he's not. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I also get emails every single day from people calling themselves IELTS teachers saying, Chris, can you help me become a better teacher? I mean, that's noble that you're trying to get better, but don't teach a class. Don't take money off people, until you know what you're doing. Um, Roberto, can we capitalize, write all capital letters in reading and listening? Yes, you can, no problem. Omar, is the introduction must consist of paraphrasing, thesis statement, outline. That's a general way of doing it. Uh, but you need to be aware of introductions are different depending on the type of question. So an opinion one is going to be different from a discussion one, is going to be different from a double question, it's going to be, they're all different. So you need to be aware of that. Balombo. Okay, very good question, Balombo. Um, I had a tutorial test in a center and I wrote my introduction as simple and meaningful, but the examiner told me it's very simple and I should use complex words and phrases, so he gave me a band 6. Okay, so examiners are not allowed to tell anybody they're an examiner. So either this person is lying to you by pretending to be an examiner, or they're lying to their employer by telling them, I won't tell anyone I'm an examiner. So this person is a liar. When you become an examiner, you have to sign a contract that says, I won't tell anybody I'm an examiner. You're not allowed to tell anybody that. So this person, by telling you I'm an examiner, is either lying to you or lying to their employer. Do you think that that person should be trusted? Do you think that, and I guarantee I'd put $100,000 bet on that they are lying about being an examiner, because an examiner would never tell you you need to use complex words and phrases instead of actually writing more clearly, because that's the same thing as imagine a, a personal trainer, a gym, someone working at a gym, and I go in and I can lift 50 kilograms. That's like a personal trainer coming to me and saying, oh, you can only lift 50, you need to lift 150, like telling me to do something that I'm completely incapable of doing. If you are at a certain band right now, telling you you need to use more complex language, it's like saying the exact same thing as a personal trainer saying you need to lift twice your body weight, and like you're going to drop um, the weight on your head and kill yourself. So uh, tell your examiner that Chris from IELTS Advantage says hello. So, um, and if you want to give me their name, feel free to email it to me because I know all of the senior examiners and everything. I can quickly tell them that either somebody is pretending or they've just broken their contract. So I have no problem doing that. Shakir Shirak, would you share some lessons regarding the common issues made by students in this group? That's exactly what this lesson is about. You missed the first half of it. I'm sorry. It'll be posted immediately once I finish this lesson. You can watch the replay immediately. Just searching for another question that would help a lot of you. Namila, can we write positive as well as negative points in our introduction? I wouldn't suggest you do that because that means that you're going to have to discuss those in the main body. So that means that you're going to have to write way more than you need to. The question is, do you think it's a do you think it is a positive or negative development? It doesn't say discuss both positive and negative and then give your own opinion. It just says, do you think it's positive or negative? So the correct answer is, I think it's positive or I think it's negative. Um, so yeah, you don't need to do that. A lot of you are asking about thesis statements. Um, a thesis statement is not my opinion is. A thesis statement is what you think about something. And by saying, I think this is positive for this reason, that's your thesis statement. Um, what you're doing is you're applying general rules to specific questions, which is dangerous. Marta, very good question. I have about 1 month to prepare for my IELTS exam, and also I have to pass my medicine exams.
How can I improve my vocabulary as fast as possible? Okay, so you're a medical student. When you become a doctor, imagine that I come into your doctor's office with a broken leg, and I say, I've broken my leg, doctor, fix it in 1 week. What would you say to me? You'd probably laugh at me. That's kind of exactly the same as your question. I've got lots, I'm really, really busy. I don't have time, but I want to improve my vocabulary in 1 month and not really do anything about it. Um, that's all I'm going to say about that. That's as silly as somebody walking in and saying, I've got a broken leg, fix it in a week. It's not going to happen. It's totally possible for a doctor to fix your broken leg in 6 to 8 weeks, but it's not going to happen in 1 week. Um, you cannot learn vocabulary properly in such a short period of time. It doesn't work like that because you're not memorizing the vocabulary, you're learning how to use the vocabulary. You can memorize lots of words and lots of meanings, but that is completely different from being able to use that vocabulary in a sentence, and that takes time. If you're a doctor, you should know basically how memory works and how it takes time to learn something new. Sorry if that sounds a little bit harsh, but sometimes it's best to be harsh with people to wake them up and remind them that they're, if you're sitting beside somebody driving a car and they're falling asleep, it's better to, punch them and make sure that they wake up so they don't kill themselves. You're driving a car asleep at the moment. Um, Cheyenne, very good question. I wonder why there are IELTS coaches who teach us complicated words and terminologies because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. Most IELTS teachers are not real teachers for a start. Um, and most it's shocking the level. It's because anybody can start an IELTS center and just say I'm an IELTS teacher. And most IELTS centers in your local areas are people who work there or people who just got high IELTS scores. Like they got a band 7 and then the next day they're an IELTS teacher. Um, I'm sure you can figure out why that would be problematic. Many of you are asking, how can I join your VIP course? How can I? Let's talk about that another day because I want to help as many people as I can for free. Um, that's closed right now anyway. So we have a waiting list of people waiting to get in. Um, Good question. Basically, a lot of you have been asking, what if I know nothing about the topic? That's kind of like saying, I'm going to fly on a plane. What if it crashes? Um, like it could crash. Planes do crash, but it's very rare. Um, Many of you think about worst case scenarios, like what if I go into the speaking test and I get asked a question I know nothing about, or what if this happens, or what if that happens? It's unlikely to happen. However, we can always prepare for that, and you should be reading and listening every day in English. If you're serious about getting a high mark, you should be reading and listening every single day. So why not spend 10 or 20 minutes a day reading about the common task 2 topics? You can do that by reading the news each day. Um, and that should be, all you need to do. So, yeah. Um, a lot of you are asking questions I've already answered. So I'm not answering those questions because I don't want to waste time and repeat myself. Um, Mustafa, is it so bad if we use complicated words in the introduction? No, if you know how to use them correctly, use them. But most of you don't know how to use them correctly. So you have a choice. Use words that pretty much guarantee that you're going to make your essay incoherent, get a low vocabulary score, and a low grammar score. Or don't do that. Think about this logically. The reason why you're using complex, complicated words is because you want to get a high IELTS score. I'm telling you that it does the exact opposite. So why would you do it? You know? Feel free to send me some of your work and like where you think that you have used vocabulary and grammar really accurately while keeping it really, really complicated. And if you do that, then great, amazing. But I would put a very sizable bet that you can't do that. You're not capable of doing that. Which is not saying you're a bad person. It's just you're not at the level you need to be yet. And the level you need to be at to get a seven is not very high. I know that sounds harsh, because for many of you to get a seven in writing is like an unbelievable achievement. But many of you are not getting a seven because you're overcomplicating your language. And once you simplify things, and why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I have helped more students than of what I know of, and I have proof of this on my website, I've helped more students get the IELTS scores that they need at a seven or above level than any other teacher in the world. Um, um, if I'm saying keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple, and over the course of years, hundreds and thousands of students keep getting high IELTS scores following that advice, and I see the opposite happening when they don't do that, then it doesn't take Einstein to figure out what's happening. So hopefully that convinces you. Um, Sorry if I'm not answering all of your questions. I'm only answering like 10% of them because I'm just looking at ones that I think would be useful for everybody or haven't been asked already. And Nurahan, sometimes I feel confused about the tenses I should use. Use the tense that it's appropriate to use for each sentence or each verb. If you're talking about the past, use the past. If you're talking about the present, use present. If you're talking about the future, use future. Don't It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Obviously, you need to know about the different tenses and when you use them. Um, so if you need that, you need to work on that. But it shouldn't be uh, a mystery to you about what you should be doing. Uh, do, do, do. So most of the questions are questions I've already answered, so I'm just trying to find questions that haven't been asked already. Can we use similar words as long as it means the same? Uh, yeah, that's what a synonym is. That's exactly what you should be doing, but it should mean the same. What is the maximum words to be used in task two? There is no maximum, but if but you don't get any extra marks for writing a really long essay. And most people who write really long essays tend to go off topic pretty widely, and they don't check their work. So it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So you should task two, I'd say I always tell my students that I work with 260 to 300, around there, around that sweet spot. If you're going much over 300, you're not really spending enough time focusing on your grammar and your vocabulary, which is 50% of your total score. And because you need to be thinking about what you're doing, you need to proofread everything at the end. Like you've seen in my presentation, I made a small typo. Everybody makes typos. When I'm writing essays, I misspell things and I make little mistakes. And if I'm doing that, how much are you doing that? So you need 5 minutes at the end to check everything. Uh, Janitor, can you show how to write quickly task one? No, I can't show you how to write it quickly. I can show you how to write it effectively in 20 minutes. I think that's um, what do you mean? Yeah, basically, I can show you how to do anything you want, but I can't do it in a Q&A session. To show you how to write a task one tables, I'd have to do a whole lesson or series of lessons on it. And obviously I can't pull those out of my head. Um, so, but it's all on the different courses that I have. Um, Sharik, you keep asking the same question over and over and over and over and over again, and we've already just done that at the start of the lesson. If you keep asking the same question many times, Facebook will block you. Not me, but Facebook will, because they think that you're spamming. I know you're not, but just be careful because it's happened in the past where people ask the same question, Facebook blocks them, and then they send me a nasty email saying, "Why did you block me?" It's like, I didn't. Artificial intelligence blocked you. So you're getting angry with an algorithm. Um, okay, so it's the same questions over and over and over again, guys, and I've already answered them all. Um, I'm gonna try and find some other ones, but if not, I'm just gonna wrap it up. Yeah. Okay, guys. I know there's a lot of people who haven't answered your question. My brain is starting to shut down now. I'm getting brain fog. I can't answer all of your questions individually. Um, Hopefully I answered enough. Hopefully that was useful for you. If you joined and you didn't see the beginning of the lesson, I will post this video immediately in the Facebook group so you can go and look at it. Um, well, see what I mean? My brain just starts shutting down. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'll be posting the main body paragraphs lesson. Obviously very important. That's what most of your essay is going to be, your main body paragraphs. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. Join me tomorrow. Do the homework task tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me. Sorry that I can't individually answer all of your questions, but there's a limit to what my brain can do. It's very tiring, doing live stuff. So thank you very much, guys. If I didn't answer any of your questions, join me on Thursday for the live Q&A. Um, Hopefully I answered all of them. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Thank you very much, guys, and see you again.